everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Tonight's guest is Scott Setterberg. Setterberg. Something tonight we're doing a little different is I've got the flu, and so my voice is about to crack. So I've asked Scott to just kind of take over and introduce himself. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Scott.
So thank you again for having me. I appreciate being here. Waterfalls are something that's always been really magical to me. I'm happy to do this presentation and share my techniques and compositions and ways to help you all capture them in better ways. Um, let's see here. Okay, Um, so I have been a photographer for about 35 years, and I am the owner and CEO of ColorTexturePhotoTours. So I do workshops for photographers of all skill levels in Costa Rica and the Pacific Northwest. So like I said, waterfalls have always been really amazing to me, and it's something that has always stuck with me and something that is a focus on all of my workshops. So, um, let's get into it a little bit. So I'm going to cruise through this kind of quickly. You can read everything that you'd like as I'm going along. So I have a degree in photography, and I first started shooting in 1990, and I learned with film, and I shot a variety of cameras, and I've always shot manual from day one. So I have a really good technical understanding, and photography's always seemed really magical to me. I really always liked working in the dark rooms, and just seeing the process of images come up on paper was always really incredible. Something that I never really fully understood. I just felt like it was magical. Photography is like the one thing that stuck with me through my whole life. Um, it's just been great. I've done all kinds of different types of photography, anything you can think of, really. I started out doing kind of fine art images, and because I was in urban centers, I always did like kind of rusty peeling paint and urban decay kind of things. But I always went back to waterfalls. That's what I always really loved the most. And I was living in LA for about 20 years, and I was, excuse me, I was working in the film industry. And so I had opportunities to go to Yosemite National Park. And before that, though, while I was shooting in urban situations, a friend of mine introduced me to HDR, high dynamic range processing. And I really loved the effect that gave to photos in those settings. And so when I went to Yosemite one year, I started applying that to my landscape photographs, and it was really a game changer. So I still use that a lot with all of my photography. 2012, I went to Costa Rica. I went there to check it out to see if it could be a place that I could move to. I was tired of working in the film industry and wanted to do something different. And I was there for a couple of weeks with a friend and fell in love with the country. It's just incredibly beautiful and so diverse. And on that trip, I got the idea to bring other people down to Costa Rica and do photography workshops and to help them improve their photography. After a couple more years of going back and forth, I went back to Costa Rica again. And I was still working in the film industry, saving money. And then I finally took the plunge and moved to Costa Rica in 2016, and then started putting together the photography workshop business. Um, First tour was in 2018, and then because of the pandemic, I was in Costa Rica and I had to leave the country, and they closed the borders, and I wasn't a citizen, so I had to leave the country. And because I sold everything and couldn't go back to LA, I came back to my hometown, which is the Tri-Cities in Washington State. And once I realized that we were going to be here for a while and things were going to be kind of challenging, I started scouting lots of old favorite locations and new locations, and I put together workshops here in the Pacific Northwest also. So now I have 6 workshops in Washington and Oregon and 4 in Costa Rica. And I've been published in different publications you can see there. And I'm also a member of NAMPA, the North American Nature Photography Association. So this is a photograph. I just kind of wanted to break up the text a little bit and just show you a nice image. This actually is from my last workshop last month, my Washington Waterfalls workshop. It's in the Columbia River Gorge, and this is a waterfall called Panther Creek Falls. This is a lower section of it. A lot of people that know waterfalls know the upper section of it, but I don't see very many shots of this lower section of it. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you. Um, so aside from just like being magical to me, there's actually like a scientific explanation for why waterfalls kind of give us that magical sort of energy. And the thing is that when water is like constantly flowing and colliding with itself or moving quickly, negative ions are released, and they they form a lot more near waterfalls, but also in oceans and rivers and streams, and even during thunderstorms. And so, like I said, there's a high concentration of them around waterfalls, and that's why things feel kind of magical and feel fresher and energizing when you're around a waterfall. And they actually like help us to feel better. So we breathe in the ions, and they interact with our bodies, and they provide a lot of healing properties. So they reduce stress and they boost our serotonin levels. They can help with digestion and our sleep, and they help to regulate our emotions. Um, they increase the serotonin, which is the happiness molecule. And serotonin, low levels of serotonin are linked to depression and anxiety, and the higher levels of serotonin create a calmness and happiness and emotional stability. So when you breathe in the negative ions, they enter your bloodstream through your heart and your lung, or sorry, through your lungs, and they interact with your nervous system. So they promote the release of serotonin in the brain, and that elevates our mood and creates emotional balance. So they also improve our body's ability to absorb oxygen, which also helps our brain function. And they reduce cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So, with reduced cortisol, then serotonin's positive effects become more pronounced. So, being near a waterfall, it also has kind of a meditative effect. Just the rhythmic sound of the water. It's kind of like a white noise that drowns out mental chatter and helps to promote relaxation. So obviously, the mist cools our skin and it refreshes our body and it enhances our sensory experience. So waterfalls are sanctuaries that recharge our body and mind, and it's like a natural form of therapy. So this is a shot that I took. This place is called Tokiti Falls. It's in kind of south central Oregon. Um, and again, I just wanted to include it just to kind of break up the text um, and give you something pretty to look at. Um, so I knew from scouting this location that I needed to get down to this lower level because there's a viewing platform that's up above, and it's an okay shot from up there. And I think a lot of people who know Oregon waterfalls have seen shots from there, but very few people actually get down to this location because it requires some rappelling. It wasn't a lot of work. It was a lot more work than I anticipated, but after I saw a few people go down, some gracefully, some not very gracefully, I figured that I could do it, and I'm glad that I did. to be able to capture this image. Okay, so let's get into some of the equipment necessary for great waterfall photos. So obviously, or maybe not obviously for some, a tripod is mandatory. The tripod increases stability and allows for different techniques for exposure bracketing. And with the exposure bracketing, then it gives you more options to be able to control the movement of the water in the waterfalls and in the streams. Um, so for lenses, it's really the trifecta, a wide angle of some type, whatever your favorite is. I shoot with Nikon, so I like the 16 to 35, and then a mid-range zoom, 24 to 70 for me, and then a 70 to 200. Um, and out of all of those, I use the 16 to 35 probably 80% of the time. And then the 24 to 70 most of the time after that. Occasionally, I'll use the 70 to 200 when I want to get in tight and shoot some details. Okay, so here's some examples of different lenses and how they reproduce the scenes. So this is at a waterfall called Templo, which is at La Paz Waterfall Gardens in Costa Rica. And I'm shooting from this spot. I'm standing on a bridge that actually goes over the stream to the right a little bit. And so this is with my wide angle lens. So you really get the full entire scene of all the jungle, and it's a with the wider angle lens, it gives you the opportunity to include a lot of things that you normally wouldn't, to really be able to see the full scene entirely. So then this is with my 70 to, or sorry, my 24 to 70. So zoomed in about halfway uh, as far as the scene goes. So you can see quite a bit of compression, gives you an entirely different perspective of the waterfall and the stream. And then I punched in a little bit tighter with the 70 to 200. So then you're getting a lot more of the finer details. You're obviously not going to be able to see the full falls because you're zoomed in quite a bit differently. Um, but that gives you a good example of the ranges of the different lenses and how they can reproduce scenes. Okay, so another mandatory tool for waterfalls is a circular polarizing filter. So the polarizing filter, it enhances colors and it reduces glare and reflections, particularly on rocks and leaves and on the surface of water. And it also allows you to be able to see underneath the surface of the water. So you can see details like small pebbles or rocks or like tree branches that have fallen into a stream that you normally wouldn't be able to see because of the glare. And so they also block light. So, and they're all a little bit different. Generally, they block between 1 and a stop and a half of light. Sometimes there's a little bit more, sometimes two. And then for them, so the filter itself, it rotates. So that's why it's called a circular polarizing filter. And so you can turn it and uh, as you turn it, you can increase or decrease the amount of the effect. And it works best at a 90-degree angle to the sun. Okay, so here's some examples. So this is a shot in Costa Rica also. This is a place called San Ramon Senderos, a great location with a bunch of different waterfalls along this river. And so this shot to just show you, this is with no filters at all. I am on a tripod, but I think I'm shooting at f11, like ISO 100. And I think the shutter speed here is like a 30th of a second. So you can see without any filters, there's a lot of glare that's on the surface of the water. You can't really see too deeply into the water. And for the waterfall itself, you see that the motion of the water is pretty stationary. There's not a lot of motion. There's not a lot of blur in the waterfall itself. So just by adding a polarizer filter, then I'm going to be able to increase the amount of flow of the waterfall itself and create some streaky patterns in it. Okay, so this is just with the polarizing filter alone. So you can see that there's a big decrease in the glare on the surface of the water in front of the waterfalls, but also just the like stop and a half difference from the polarizer creates a lot more movement in the motion of the water in the waterfall. Okay, and so then another thing that you can use is neutral density filters, and that will give you a little bit more motion in water. And ND filters are really great if you're shooting something that's in direct sunlight also. So, and they also, since they block light, they make it so that you have to use longer exposures, and then the longer exposures will smooth out the surface of the water also. Okay, so again, this is the very first shot. This has no filters at all. And then this is with the polarizing filter, and you can see things starting to get smoothed out quite a bit. And then this shot is with the neutral density filter, and you can see quite a bit of difference in the surface of the water. You can also start to see through the surface of the water over kind of in the lower right corner. You can start to see underneath the surface of the water there a lot more than you could in the original shot where there's no filter at all. And then also the motion of the waterfall itself, you can see that there's a lot more kind of silky smooth pattern there, kind of a more of a creaminess that you get from just the polarizer alone. Okay, and then this is another example of using the neutral density filter. So this is at a place called Ancient Lakes in Washington State. And so at this point, so this waterfall is facing west, and in the afternoon it always gets blasted with the sun. And so at this point, like I'm shooting at ISO 100, I'm stopped all the way down to f22. Like I can't, there's nothing else that I can do to get any more motion in the water. And you can see from the motion of the waterfall or in the waterfall that it's still kind of chunky and I don't have that silky smoothness. So what I did was I added a neutral density filter here, and then this is the result. So you can see it's quite a bit different. And for me, some people prefer to not have as much silky smoothness in waterfall shots. I've seen comments where they like it a little bit more chunky, a little bit more texture in the water. And it's personal preference, but for me, I tend to lean this way. So in order to be able to capture scenes like this, especially in direct sunlight, you really do need neutral density filters. Okay, and so then another filter that you could use is a graduated neutral density filter, which helps out for when you're photographing a waterfall and there's some sky that you want to include. Oftentimes, a waterfall is going to be in a canyon or a valley. There's going to be trees around, so it's going to be um, kind of in the shade as opposed to the sky, which is going to have a lot more light. And so you're going to need to bring down the amount of light in the sky to balance with your exposure of the waterfall itself. So again, this is that same location, but I just changed my composition a little bit to include some of the sky there. And this is an okay exposure. Like there's still a little bit of detail. It was a cloudy sky to begin with, so it's not just blown out blasted white. But when I use a graduated neutral density filter, then you can see that it changes the sky just a little bit there. I'm not sure if everyone saw that, so I'll go back. This is the original image if you're looking at the sky. And then with the graduated neutral density filter, there is that right there. So you get a bit more detail, a bit more texture in the sky to kind of balance out the overall image. Okay, another thing that I love to use is a shutter release cable. There's different things that you can do. You can use a release cable. You can also set your timer. I like to use the shutter release cable because I bracket all of my shots. So I'll do a series of 3 shots at a time, and I've found that if I have it just my camera just set to automatically take those 3 shots, particularly when there's wind, that I'll get motion in like foreground leaves or grasses that I don't want in the shot. So with the shutter release cable, I have total control. So I can wait until there's no wind. I can take my one shot. If the wind comes up, then I can just wait a little bit until it dies back down again, and then I can take my other shots versus just trying to bang them all out one, two, three. And there's going to be some shift in the grasses or the leaves and things that I would prefer to be in focus. Okay, so those are really my go-tos as far as equipment is concerned. So then for technical decisions, there's quite a few different things that I do. So obviously your ISO, your shutter speed, and your aperture all work together. And as you change one, you need to change the others to give you a proper exposure. With the ISO, I try to shoot as low ISO as possible, but there's oftentimes that at a particular waterfall, there's just too much water coming. It's too dense, it's too fast that I can't really get any texture in the water when I'm shooting with a low ISO. And so I've learned to just bump up my ISO quite a bit. And sometimes I'll even shoot like up at 1600. And I know that a lot of people are terrified to do that for the noise that can be introduced. But with software programs like Topaz AI now, their denoise program is really fantastic. And so I don't even worry about it anymore. What I'm just focused on now is just trying to get a lot of detail in the water. So aperture is obviously going to control how much is in focus throughout your shot. And I shoot in a way where I start at f11 with the composition and I do my bracketed shots there. And then I'll move to 16 and I'll change my exposure to start with a normal. And then I'll do an overexpose and an underexpose. So I'll do that at f16 and then I'll do that at f22 also. And I do that to get different textures in the water. I mean, obviously shutter speed's going to either allow you to drag the shutter or it's going to be a little bit faster and that's going to give you the silky smooth water or a little bit chunky water. But as you change your aperture, you're obviously having to change your shutter speed too in order to start off with a normal exposure. So I shoot this way. It's just for me, it works really easily. It really helps a lot for me in editing when I'm going through my images. I know that I have a set of bracketed shots at f11, f16, f22. I can go through each one, find the one that has the best depth of field. Everything's in focus as well as the best texture detail in the motion of the waterfall also. And so then I'll pull from those and then in my editing process, I'll combine those together with the high dynamic range process and create one image. And then I'll use that one image as my go-to and start really editing that one image. Okay, and this is an example of just different shutter speeds and how they have an effect on the overall look of the water in the waterfall. So the image on the left, it's obviously a faster shutter speed, so you're getting more detail. The water's a little bit chunky for me. I tend to prefer the one that's on the right a little bit more, and that's obviously a slower shutter speed. So the way that I shoot with that bracketed set of three shots with at 11, 16, and 22, I know that I'm going to get a wide range of detail in the water. So I know that I'm going to have this range that I can choose from. Okay, and so, and just talking a little bit more about the exposure bracketing. So I set up my camera so that it's programmed for one-stop increments. So I start with a normal exposure, and then I'll do one stop overexposed and then one stop underexposed. And like I said before, I'll do that at f11, and then I do it at 16, and then I do it at 22, which ensures that I'm going to have a wide range of detail in the water. And then for the depth of field, I focus about a third of the way into the image. If I include things in the foreground or there's wind, um, I might need to do some focus stacking. So I might do an exposure for my foreground and then one for my middle ground and then one towards the back just to ensure that everything's sharp. And then in post-processing, I'll combine those images together. But generally, most of the time, I don't need to do that. And so I just focus about a third of the way into the image, and that produces super sharp images. Okay, and so um, another thing that I have to remind myself to do a lot is to check and adjust my polarizer. I mean, at this point, because I use a polarizer so much, I know exactly when the effect of it is being applied and when it's not. But one thing that happens to me is that when I change from horizontal to vertical or vice versa, you have to change the polarizer again because the position of it has changed, and so it's going to react differently from that horizontal or vertical position. As you change to the other, you have to readjust your polarizer again to get the full effect of it. And then I'm asking myself if I want to use ND filters, so I'm checking, my playback and looking and seeing the details and making decisions about what else I can do. And then it's the same with the ND filter. And I forgot to say it when I was showing you about the polarizer and the ND filters, but with the graduated ND filter, another thing that you can do instead of having to have a set of ND filters is you can do one exposure for the waterfall for the whole overall scene. And this is if you have some sky included and you were going to use a graduated ND filter, but maybe you don't have them with you. And so what you can do is you take that initial overall exposure for the whole entire scene, and then you can take a series of other exposures to just expose for the sky. And you just shoot those exposures until you get the sky looking the way that you want it. And then in post processing, you can combine one of those good sky images together with the overall good exposure of the whole entire scene and merge them together. So I'm always checking my histogram and make sure that everything's looking good there and things aren't getting blown out on either the white side or the dark side. Um, And one of the things that I encourage people not to do is just shoot like crazy. And when I was in photography school, all my instructors always said, just shoot as much as you can because film is, the cheapest thing that you have. And so whatever you see, just shoot it to make sure that you capture it, even if it doesn't really look that good. And I completely disagree with that. Now I'm super, super conscious of everything that I shoot, and I really take my time and think about composition and things that I want to include in each composition. And so I don't overshoot, and it helps out a lot with editing too. So you're not having to go through and just throw away tons of images. And like I was talking about earlier, one thing that I always encourage everyone to do is to shoot both vertical and horizontal. And here's some examples of doing just that. So this is a location called Lower Lewis Falls, which is in the Columbia River Gorge in Washington. So both images are great images, but I started with the horizontal and really I thought it was a great image. I've got a nice foreground, middle ground, and background. But then I also made myself shoot vertical, even though sometimes I feel like well, it's a horizontal looking shot that I think is going to be the best. And then when I force myself to shoot vertically, then I find something equally as amazing. And so the image on the right, I was able to include the rocks in the foreground with the cool grasses, and it really gives you more options to add to your portfolio. And it also really helps with posting on social media. Um, Social media vertical images display so much better than horizontal images, and on our phones we're looking at them vertically too, so always having a vertical option of your scene is a great thing to do. This is another example. This is a waterfall called La Fortuna in Costa Rica. It's the same kind of thing. The image on the right, I shot that and thought that was the hero image, and then I backed off and shot vertically and found the image on the right, and now I like the image, the vertical image, better than the original image that I thought was the hero image that I couldn't get any better. And again, there's another example. This is also Costa Rica. This is a waterfall called Celestial. And um, again, I really like both images both ways, and it's just good to have options. Okay, so my creative process for composition is, I say that 90% of great photography is really just getting to the location and just putting in the work. I mean, some locations are kind of tough to get to, or you might have to get wet and get in the stream, but doing those things is what gets you really great results. So I do a lot of online research to find out um, what would be the best time of day to shoot locations. And then once I finally get to a scene, I really slow down and I just try to connect with the scene and just like appreciate being there and kind of give thanks and just figure out how I can convey emotion in the photos that I'm going to create. And the emotion that I feel from being in such amazing, powerful places, I want to try to evoke that emotion in my photographs too. So I start to think about that and I start to search around, excuse me, I start to look for things that I can incorporate into compositions. And so I pay attention to the wind and the sun position and shadows. And like I said before, like I really pay attention to how much water there is and the speed of the water, so that I can kind of get a good starting point, of exposure for each scene. And then I'm thinking about lens choice. And like I told you before, most of the time I'm shooting with the two lenses, the 16 to 35 or the 24 to 70. And then I'm thinking about the rule of thirds. So I'm always dividing up my frame into thirds, and I'm looking for a good foreground, an interesting middle section, and then a background. And so I try to include as many surrounding elements as I can. Rocks and trees and grasses and textures and or like a fallen log that could be a leading line. I look for all kinds of different things and try to incorporate those things into compositions. So here's some examples. This is a place called Butte Creek Falls, which is in Oregon. Um, and so for this, there's nice foreground with the rocks in either corner. The middle ground has the nice foliage there, and then a little bit further back into the middle ground, there's the rocks that have the mosses on them, and then the waterfall is in the background in the distance. So you can see that there's a nice division into thirds of the frame. And then here's an example of incorporating surrounding elements. So when I went to this place, this is Toro Amarillo in Costa Rica, and I walked across the bridge, which, as you can probably tell, it's not the most stable thing in the world. And there's a really great perspective of the waterfall and the stream below it from the bridge, but it was super wobbly, and there's a ton of wind and spray coming from the waterfall, and it was really almost impossible to get a good quality shot there. So just even setting up your tripod, there was still too much motion on that bridge. So I went and photographed other things, and then on the way back, I figured out how to get down below the falls. And initially, I was thinking, well, I really don't like that bridge right there going through the middle of my shot. But once I found this composition, I actually liked it. So in the foreground, I've got the rocks and the lower cascade coming down of the stream. Over on the left, there's a tree that's right there that's kind of a little bit pushed in a little bit towards the middle. And then there's the bridge that is in that middle section. And then the waterfall again is in the background. So again, there's the three sections. There's the foreground, there's the middle ground, and the background. And this is another example of that. This is a place called Sweet Creek Falls in Oregon. So I incorporated the rocks in the foreground. And then there's the larger rocks, the one over towards the left side with the moss on it. and then the main waterfall in the background. And this right here is an excellent example of using a polarizer, and you can see that you can see beneath the surface of the water. You can see all of the rocks and the details below the surface. So again, that's another reason why a polarizer is really mandatory for photographing waterfalls. Okay, so another thing I like to do is include natural framing. So this is a place called Abiqua Falls. Often, um, I will only like put the waterfall right in the center of the image if there's some natural framing around that, or if I can make the image be super symmetrical. So for this shot, instead of offsetting the waterfall to one side or the other, I just shot it straight on, but using the ferns in the foreground, created this kind of natural vignette that I really loved. So that's a good example of incorporating natural elements. And then this is a waterfall called Llanos de Cortez in Costa Rica. It's on every list of best waterfalls in Costa Rica, and I've seen it shot from all kinds of different perspectives, but I wanted to try to capture it in a unique way. So I found this tree branch that was extending out, and I got down really low and was in a crazy uncomfortable position, but the branch going out over the top of the falls there, it actually helped to block out some of the sky that was really bright. So it kind of covered that up a little bit, and then it just creates this natural vignette around the waterfall itself. And this is the same again. This was the waterfall La Fortuna, and the trees on either side coming in act as a natural vignette that then draws your eye towards the waterfall in the background. Okay, so I mentioned it a little bit before about balance, and I really do like to offset waterfalls to one side or the other, and then particularly use the stream below the falls as kind of a leading line to bring your eye back into the waterfall itself. And here's some examples of that. This is a private farm in Costa Rica in San Ramon. And this is a waterfall called Esmeralda because of the emerald green water. And by offsetting the waterfall here, not just placing it in the center of the screen, pushing it over to the one side, I'm able to include all of the pool below the falls instead of only being able to just capture a portion of it. And same thing here. This is the place where it had the hanging bridge going in front of the waterfall. This is the same location. Um, and this waterfall, I shot it vertically also. And I was like, okay, it's all right. But I really love these all these leaves are on the right side of it. And so I wanted to incorporate them. So by pushing the waterfall over to the left side, I was able to do that and make the scene a lot more interesting than if I just shot it vertically and placed the waterfall right in the center of the image. And same thing here. So this is this is Middle North Falls, which is a waterfall at Silver Falls State Park in Oregon. And so this is on my Oregon Fall Colors workshop. And obviously, I wanted to incorporate as much of the fall colors as I could. So pushing the fall to the right allowed me to be able to do that and capture, a bit of the stream going down to the left also. And like I said, use the stream below the waterfall as a leading line. And so here's some examples of doing that. And this is a waterfall called Las Chorreras in Costa Rica. And it's already a cool waterfall, really unique with the dual cascades and the water, this crazy cool turquoise color. But then getting down low here and shooting back up the falls, offsetting the fall, putting it over to the right, using the stream as a leading line to lead your eye back into the falls, and then the rocks in the lower left-hand corner create a really nice foreground. And this is a waterfall called Pozo Azul in Sarapiqui, Costa Rica. And I shot here for a while. I mean, it's a cool place. I was kind of struggling with the composition, and everything was just kind of plain, and I wasn't finding anything that was really spectacular until I walked down the stream a ways. And so that's something that I encourage people to do is just walk along the stream for a while and get away from, put some more distance between yourself and the waterfall. Don't get so close to it. Like back up and then look back up at it and see what is there and see what you can incorporate into the shot. So this is a great example of using this stream below the fall as a nice leading line, and you get this great motion in the water, texture in it, and just adds some great design elements into the shot. And then this is a waterfall called Nayuyaka in Costa Rica. This is my personal number one favorite waterfall in Costa Rica. I've shot here before, and the water was a lot higher, and so I wasn't able to get into this position other times that I've been there. So I was excited to be able to shoot downstream this far on this particular time going there. And again, it's just using backing off, getting away from the falls because so many people want to get up close and just like fill the frame of just the waterfall. But when you back off, you're able to incorporate so many other things that are there at the location and really tells a story about the place that you're at. So from here, again, I'm able to use the stream as a leading line leading up into the falls there in the distance. And this is another example in the foreground of a polarizer and being able to cut the glare on the surface of the water, and then you can see underneath the surface of the water and see the details of the rocks there. Okay. So then kind of moving on to the your 70 to 200 millimeter lens is I said don't be afraid to crop in tight on a portion of the waterfall. And then I have a few examples of that. So this is a waterfall called Elysiana, also in Costa Rica. I really love this drop below the falls and really wanted to be able to capture that, but wasn't able to capture the whole waterfall in the distance behind there because it's like 120 feet tall. And so just by incorporating a little bit of the waterfall in the background, it still adds some depth to the image and creates a little bit more interest. And then this is Llanos de Cortez in Costa Rica also, which that was the photo that had the tree branch extending over on the left side that I showed you earlier. So just by zooming in and just capturing details, it just gives you another perspective. And you could even zoom in even tighter on this and just capture more of individual cascades with the colors and the textures of the wall behind the waterfall. And also, like if you look at the detail on the rocks in the foreground, you can see the just the contrast of the white splashing onto the dark rocks is really interesting. So I encourage people to zoom in tight and to look for details like that as well. And one last example of that. This is uh, La Paz waterfall. It's at La Paz Waterfall Gardens. Um, and I mean, this is actually it's more of just like a river landscape shot than it is really a waterfall shot. I just used a little portion of the waterfall and but there's so much power to it, and that was what I really wanted to capture here. So this is a good example of taking many different exposures, of bracketing your exposures so that you're able to capture the detail that's in the water. It really makes a huge difference. Okay, so um, I have several workshops that are available. My Costa Rica workshops are what are coming up next. I'm at the end of the US photo workshop season now. So in January is when I begin in Costa Rica again. So all my workshops in Costa Rica are all inclusive. My US options, they have do-it-yourself options too for people that want to drive themselves, get their own hotel rooms, pay for their own meals. They can do that as well. Or there's the all-inclusive option as well. In Costa Rica, I have a professional nature guide who's with us on all of the workshops. He's fantastic. I've known him since 2012. He's got like 18, 19 years of experience. He's a Costa Rican. He knows everything about the country that you could possibly want to know, all the locations. He knows all the wildlife, all the plants. He knows the history of the country. He knows the climate, the biodiversity. He really brings a lot of value to these workshops. I'm really, really grateful to have him on them. So you'll learn professional photography and post-processing techniques. The locations are just fantastic. I can't emphasize enough how amazing Costa Rica is. And it's primarily just known as a bird destination or wildlife destination. But the thing is like if you're just going there only to shoot birds, you're missing out on like 95% of what the country has to offer. There's spectacular beaches and volcanoes and lakes and jungle streams, rainforests, cloud forests, waterfalls are unbelievable. It's just then the wildlife, even more than just the birds. There's so much wildlife, so it's a really incredibly diverse location, and I just love it there. Um, so all of the workshops have award-winning hotels, 4 and 5 star accommodations. The hotels, they're fantastic. They have pools and jacuzzis, and some of them have their own hot springs. They all have amazing restaurants with full bars. They're fantastic hotels. We always have gourmet cuisine every single day. We'll also have whatever on location, but I always make it a point to make sure that we get some kind of fantastic food every day. And so for the all-inclusive people, there's private transportation, including airport pickup and return. All the workshops, there's only 6 people available or 6 person maximum on all of them. So I help everyone with creating better compositions. We do exposure techniques and filters. We do some focus stacking, intentional camera movement. We do HDR processing and digital workflow. We do image reviews. So it's a really great experience. It's a great way to meet new friends, and we have a ton of fun on all of these experiences. And so, quickly, this is just the schedule. My next workshop coming up is the South Pacific Costa Rica workshop. It's in January. I actually have a special going on right now. It actually ends today. It's $500 off. But since it does end today, and I'm doing this presentation today for anyone that might want to go to Costa Rica that's watching this right now, I'll honor that $500 discount for you. Okay. And these are some of the locations that are on the South Pacific Costa Rica tour. We do rural landscapes, like the image in the center. We do beaches and beach sunsets. We do a bunch of waterfalls, jungle streams. There's also some wildlife. We photograph some crocodiles and poison dart frogs and whatever other wildlife we encounter. And then in February is the Colors of Costa Rica. This is my workshop that has the most wildlife on it because we go to La Paz Waterfall Gardens. There's an animal sanctuary there that has tons of birds and sloths and all kinds of wildlife that are there. We shoot Bajos del Toro, La Fortuna, Lake Arenal, Rio Celeste. It's a really great experience. And then in March is the Costa Rica Landscapes Workshop. We go to Sarapiqui, Las Gemales, Rio Cuarto, Bajos del Toro, and some places that don't really officially have names. And then in April is my last Costa Rica workshop. That's the Pura Vida Costa Rica workshop, and it starts over in Liberia, which is over in the northwest section of the country. And so we spend a couple of days photographing beach sunsets and seascapes there, and then we go inland and we do Llanos de Cortez, which I mentioned before is one of the best waterfalls in Costa Rica. We do Rincon de la Vieja, Rio Celeste, and La Fortuna. And then we come back and we start Oregon. I do the Oregon Extravaganza workshop, which is a mixture of, there's three of the seven wonders of Oregon included on this workshop. There's the Columbia River Gorge, there's the Oregon coast, and Mount Hood. And so it's a mixture of seascapes, waterfalls, rainforests, streams, and lakes, and Mount Hood's around there too. So then we do the Palouse Eastern Washington photo tour. And I've divided this up a little bit to include a lot more locations that nobody else that does Palouse workshops includes. So we do the Palouse and Palouse Falls, and all the rolling farmland. We do McNary Wildlife Refuge also. We shoot along the Columbia River and do a place called White Bluffs or the Hanford Reach. And then we do Ancient Lakes also, which that was the place where there was the one waterfall that was in the direct sunlight that I showed you about the difference of shooting it with and without the neutral density filter. And then in July, we do the Central Oregon Coast Workshop. It's kind of between Seaside and Florence, all the different seascapes that are there in that area. So there's Hug Point, Ecola State Park, Cannon Beach, um, Proposal Rock, Thor's Well, Haceta Head Lighthouse, a ton of great options on that workshop. And then in August, we do Olympic National Park, which is really a fantastic experience. There's so much diversity there. There's great beaches and seascapes. There's alpine lakes. There's the snow-capped mountains, waterfalls. There's the Hoh rainforest. It's really a diverse and great experience. And then in September is the Washington Waterfalls, and those are the best waterfalls in the Columbia River Gorge on the Washington side of the Columbia River. Falls Creek Falls, Panther Creek Falls, Lower Lewis Falls, and we end each night with a sunset at a lake, photographing Mount Hood or Mount Adams. And the last workshop of the year is the Oregon Fall Colors, and it is my favorite one of the year. It's just packed with so much color and amazing locations. And because it's in the fall, there's hardly anyone around at any of the locations. Tons of waterfalls, lots of streams. It's a great experience. So, again, that's the whole schedule for the year. And there's my contact info. And I'm done.
Yay. Okay. First of all, thank you for bringing all your lovely photos. And that coming from Texas and not having any waterfalls to speak of, it's refreshing to see that there are places in the world that have beautiful, beautiful waterfall landscapes. All right, let me get you to take down your screen and let me properly thank you, Scott, for coming again and sharing your work and some wonderful tips. And I hope that people are in the room um, that have vacation spots that they're heading to and they sneak in a waterfall, they can take some of your tips and apply them to what they're doing.
Yeah.
Scott, I was looking at that calendar for 2026.
Yeah.
You're not even taking a breath. It's one
It's
after
busy.
another.
Yeah, well,
It's
it's one a
very, very
month.
busy.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it
uh-huh.
it's awesome. I just saw the messages are flying through here. I just saw one from I think it was Val. I knew it would be Valerie. She is a waterfall. Uh, that's one of the things that she loves to photograph. And I think she said something like, "I want to go on all of your workshops."
Come on,
Valerie,
Valerie.
Valerie, you and I need to win the lottery. That's what we need to do. And then Scott, you will see us both. All right. I want to thank you for coming, and I kind of warned you I will look and see when I can sneak you back in here next year. So
Right
hopefully,
on. That's fine.
yeah, don't
I'd
say
love
no.
to come back.
Okay, love that. All right, next week, James Kelly will be here with his presentation, Shadows and Storms, Finding Beauty in Monochrome Landscapes. Until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.